All right, welcome everyone to
the
Clever
lady,
Orbit.
The voice said the recording started. Sorry.
Damn it,
I
Tyler.
interrupted.
It's beginning.
So it has begun. Welcome everybody to Clever Orbits. This is a Star Trek podcast starring myself. That is Louis Brantmeyer. I'm a resident of Austin, Texas. Work at a sign company and have my own coaching and professional development firm. And then we've got also on the line Richard and Tyler, who I would love to have them introduce themselves.
Hi,
I'm
Richard.
Tyler, or Kyle.
I'm a grad student.
He's a grad student.
And Tyler is
A human.
Okay.
I'm a meat popsicle.
Okay, well that works. So the real question, which I think our listeners might be interested by, is like, what is your relationship to Star Trek, and what is your first memory of it? So this time we're going to ask that question, and then we're going to talk about an episode called The Best of Both Worlds, which is heralded as one of the top 10 in Star Trek history. Who'd like to go first on first memories? I kind of want to hear Tyler's.
Well,
Let Tyler go first.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, thank you. I'll definitely do that. So I'm thinking of a couple of moments. One of them, I think, had to do with I was very, very young. I don't know. I'd like to think I was maybe 2 or 3. I saw my brother, my older brother, which is Louis in the podcast, wearing a red uniform from the TNG era Star Trek. He was dressing to go see William Shatner at a convention, I believe. And I don't remember if you made it. Did you make it in Chalmette?
I went to that. I was there.
You were there? Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Wait, really?
Well,
really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went with Ryan Cooper. It was second grade.
Huh.
Second grade. It was in the mid-'90s. And I was very excited
cool.
because I had never seen William Shatner in person. I've seen William Shatner in person twice in my life.
Yeah, I saw him there.
That's funny.
We were in that audience.
You saw him there.
You were in the same conference, huh? That's funny.
Did he talk about his
World's
death
too
scene in
small. We
Generations?
need a plague.
The what? Go ahead.
I remember he talked about his death scene in Generations.
Really?
Yeah.
The only thing I really remember from that conference is discovering these Star Trek technical manuals with ship classes that I'd never encountered before, clearly created by the fans. And I remember getting really excited when I saw William Shatner on stage. I just don't remember anything that he said. Memorabilia, man. Those things are all about either memorabilia or the actors. And people dressing up in costumes. Like, I went to one in San Antonio. Well, go ahead. Just let me finish this thought, and then we can get back to that.
I apologize. I'm lagging.
No, it's okay. I asked you a question, and then I interrupted your answer to interject. So that's what I'm doing.
Go ahead, bud.
And I'm doing it politely.
Very much so.
I saw William Shatner on stage the second time in my life at the Wizard World convention in San Antonio. This was in 2013. And I found out a week before that he was going to be in town. And I was like, oh, yeah, I am going to that convention. So I rented what ended up being a commander's uniform. I didn't know that it was a commander's uniform. Everybody assumed when they rented it out to me that it was a captain's uniform from the 23rd century. And so I went, and when William Shatner took the stage, I wept. I wept because of the huge impact that he's had on my whole life. We can talk a little bit about that later, but yeah. Anyway, so your second memory, what's that?
My second memory had to have been, I believe, when I was watching TOS on TV, and I had micro machines in my hands, and one of them had a bite mark in it. It was the Constitution class USS Enterprise from the original series, actually, and there was one just like in between the edge of the port side of the ship and the bridge. It was the bite mark. I'm not sure how it got there, but I pretended it was battle damage, and that was one of the most clearly vivid memories I've ever had, was the battle-damaged Enterprise fighting Star Wars ships, because I had Star Wars micro machines too, and I'd love to create battles with those things. I had an imagination then. Don't care for it anymore. Kind of sad, but also cool.
Yes,
and
yes,
indicative
you do.
of human growth.
So
I don't know
Tyler
if I
left
used
out,
any of those words correctly, but
what Tyler left out with his self-deprecatory dialogue was or monologue was the fact that he is a brilliant, well-known highly effective actor in plays at Delgado University, and he was in Romeo and Juliet. He played. What's that?
I was just adding to what you were saying. Continue. Your words are very kind.
You've played a lot of great actors. You played what was the name of that character from The Best of Enemies? It was the lead Ku Klux Klan leader who turned civil rights activist.
That's right. I played a lot of good actors, like Liam Neeson. I was Liam Neeson. I was also, I was Jeffrey Donovan one time for a fan. But
an actual production.
Slow the roll in my brother's on right now because, I was a Ku Klux Klan Cyclops. His name was C.P. Ellis. He was a real person.
Do the accent.
Wait, what? The accent?
Do C.P. Ellis. Yeah.
No, it was terrible. It was based off of the terrible accent that Kevin Spacey had for House of Cards, man. I don't want to, but I'll do it just because it's
so
funny.
Good.
It's funny to hear someone talk like this because everybody thinks, where the hell is he from? Because it certainly isn't Carolina or anywhere below the Dixie Belt, or the term I should have used when speaking that way. I don't know.
So speaking of all this acting stuff, this is Tyler and I's ambition is we will be on TV together as either extras or secondary characters, because I don't really care to be on he might be a member of the primary cast, but on Star Trek. Like, we will, preferably the 7th season of Discovery, which gives us ample time to get into the industry. Yeah.
Just extra for me. I'd rather become like a doctor or something first, like Ken Jeong, and then have my own, I don't know, something with Star Trek. That'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah,
because everyone needs startup money.
So Richard, what was your first memory?
Well, I was really into Star Wars, and I was watching TV, and I was watching Star Wars on a cassette tape, and it ran out, and then it just dropped to the whatever channel happened to be on TV at that time when the video ran out, and it was the part of the Star Trek the motion picture. It was the long, slow scene where Captain Kirk and Scotty are going out to the Enterprise on that really slow shuttle thing, and I thought that was really cool. And then I just watched everything after that.
So did you you worked your way through whatever was in
went through the movies.
At the time?
I kept on going to Blockbuster, getting my parents to get the movies, and then I watched the shows, and then I read some of the books, and then I watched more of the shows. That's pretty much it.
Oh man, that's awesome. And that's funny that Star Wars ran out, and then Star Trek was on.
It did.
It's almost like the universe trying to get you to upgrade.
It was.
I'm maybe not. There's just not enough content. It had to be created by fans, like to death, which is now rendered invalid, save for a few characters for the Star Wars extended universe, because everyone's we have a story we want to tell, so you can keep yours, but ours is the real thing. But Star Trek had so much content that had already been produced and was available for people. So
yeah, I don't like to even the dichotomy was in jest, right? The Star Trek versus Star Wars.
No, it's because they both have star in the title. That's like the only thing that makes you think that these are two things that should connected.
Also, and also one is great and one is terrible.
No one's arguing about Star Wars versus Battlestar Galactica. It's because that one doesn't have star as a main word in the title.
Right.
It's a subword.
Yeah.
Well, it does.
You think the
ship
is powered
get
by
another
an
word,
star.
Right? Battlestar.
Yeah, it's a subword.
Have you seen Battlestar, by the way, Richard?
I've seen some of it.
It's really good. Ronald D. Moore, who worked on Next Generation, and I think a little bit on Voyager, he said in the production of Battlestar, he was like, basically our ambition with Battlestar Galactica is to do everything that we couldn't do on Voyager.
So
be really
much
realistic and gritty and dark. What? No, Voyager was okay. So I'm gonna give you guys my memories.
I'm not convinced.
My memories.
You can try to get me on Voyager.
Did he ever clarify? Did he clarify, Ronald D. Moore, what exactly he couldn't do on Voyager that he could do on Battlestar? Because there were a lot of things that I felt
music with percussion.
both series.
I will reference a book called The 50-Year Mission. It's a 2-book author. I've mentioned it before. It's an oral history of Star Trek, and it's literally just made up of quotes from different people who worked on the show or in the show or whatever, and they give more in-depth stuff. I think in one of the Battlestar Galactica commentaries is where he goes into more detail about that. I just know the comment itself that, yeah, he liked to be able to do the stuff that the serialized format of Voyager with the reset button every week didn't allow. Like the whole idea being kind of that if the ship gets messed up in one episode, the next episode it will still be messed up. There are consequences to the arcs for the characters. Yeah. So anyway, I really want to talk about
pretty heavily in Battlestar. No, go ahead. Sorry, I'm pretty misinformed for a podcast.
No, it's all good. It's all good. So my memories, right? I cannot think of a time when I didn't know about Star Trek. Probably my first coherent memory as a toddler is being in a playpen seeing the opening scene, like the opening sequence with the Enterprise B moving through, the solar system on the screen. But
oh man,
there were a couple more memories.
That was so beautiful.
So poetic, yeah. My other memory is I watched some episode of the original series where Captain Kirk makes out with some alien woman, probably, and I spent the rest of that afternoon.
Girl.
Yeah, well, that happens I think twice. But it was when I was in daycare, and so while I was in daycare, I knew this older blonde girl, Marcy. And so after I made out, after I saw Kirk make out, I spent the whole day like making out with this girl, and it was so cool. And I was like, yeah, I'm just like Kirk now. So there was that, and then finally the show that was on. So there were 2 shows that were on. Actually, no. Okay, I'm just going to go through these 3 because it's really cool. The show that was on when I was growing up, like that was actually being produced. The one that got me into Star Trek, really, because I got to see it every week and feel like, whoa, it's a new episode that I'm seeing, that everybody's seeing for the first time, was Star Trek Voyager. I would curl up with an ice cream sandwich and a beanbag chair. It's red in front of the entertainment center. We called it this wooden thing.
There.
Yeah, and I would watch episodes of Voyager on Sunday nights, and then eventually Wednesday nights.
UPN.
UPN, yeah, it was good times. And 7 Days would come on before. That was another good show. So there was Voyager, and then I just continued to watch that until Enterprise came on, and I watched Enterprise, and those were my experiences with episodic Star Trek. However, 2 other things. Next Gen, actually, this was really great. You guys remember Spike TV?
Yeah.
Vaguely.
Yeah. So Spike TV was like the men's channel. It was like, all right, we're gonna have sports and all kinds of stuff.
They beat everyone over to death with that concept.
Manson.
Yeah, and then and then women in bikinis jumping on trampolines. Like I've flashbulb memory. So anyway, Spike TV bought all of the syndicated Star Trek at the time, Next Gen, DS9, Voyager, and they started to release it this is way before Netflix, so they started to release 2 episodes a night. Like it was like prime time between 7 and 9 p.m. Monday through Friday. You would have Next Gen, or you would have Voyager, or Deep Space Nine. So the first time I discovered Deep Space Nine, it was like late night network syndication. Like, and I mean by late night, it was like between 5 and 7 a.m. So I'd have to get up at 5 a.m. And sometimes I would wake up late, so I would only catch part of it. But I caught the very tail end of season 7, which is, heavily serialized, very complicated. If you get dropped into the middle of it, you don't know what the hell is going on. And I loved that. I was like, what is all of this? This is so interesting. And so that was DS9. And then I probably only saw the end of season 7 that way, like recording it on VHS tape. But with Next Gen and DS9, they started to show them every night, as I said, and so I would catch them every night after school or whatever. And then Deep Space Nine, I remember I was working at a place called Camp Rainbow. I was working as a camp counselor for special needs kids, and it was super exhausting. There were 12 3 to 5 year old special needs kids that me and a friend of mine would take care of. So I'd get home, and I'd set my VCR to record because for some reason they put Deep Space Nine on between 11 and 1 a.m. to p.m. And so I would sit and I would fast forward through commercials and I would watch them. And anyway, yeah. So I've got multiple like really great memories of Star Trek, and I've been into the books and I've gone to a couple conventions. And whenever me and my friends are like hanging out, it's kind of just a thing to do. Like we could, let's watch some Star Trek. But yeah. So that's. Oh, and I also would rent videos of the original series because it was not on in syndication from Major Video, Blockbuster Video. I remember getting really excited.
Video.
Yeah, every week we would go and we would rent, and I can still remember some of the covers for these VHS tapes. Funny looking pictures from random scenes in the episodes. But
do you remember the cover for the movie for Undiscovered Country?
Yeah, it was kind of weird.
It's got that like beam with people's faces in it.
Yeah,
they did that
yeah. I was really looking forward to that movie because I was looking forward to the explanation of that. Like, I thought they were going to make a weapon that involved like turning people into a beam. And then when I saw the movie, I was like, 8 or something, and I didn't really appreciate it when I was 8. All this like politics stuff. So I was kind of disappointed because I was just expecting to see a beam with people's faces in it.
Yeah, the Star Trek movie posters can be kind of
outstanding.
They are outstanding, but they can also be kind of deceptive. Like you're just kind of like, well, what is actually going on here? And I remember that poster very distinctly. Those posters were really cool, though. So anyway, let's now that we've spent a solid 30 minutes or so, let's talk about our topic, huh? Richard,
do we
what's our
have time
topic?
to do this justice now?
I think we do. We definitely do. A focused discussion of Best of Both Worlds can happen in 30 minutes.
Okay. Today we're talking about Best of Both Worlds, the two-parter straddling the end of Season 3 and going into the beginning of Season 4 of The Next Generation, where, I don't know, does someone else want to give a synopsis?
Tyler?
I don't think you want me to give one.
Okay. So it starts off with the gang on this planet, and there's this big crater, and stuff was destroyed, and they're confused, and then they get a call from Admiral Hansen, who's God, and God tells them that they think it might be the Borg, and he sends this young, I don't remember what her rank is, but she's got 2 solid pips and a empty pip.
Oh, Commander
so
Shelby. Her name is Commander Shelby.
Yeah, well, she's commander, but she's under Riker, so she's like lieutenant commander.
Oh, yeah, she's lieutenant commander. You're right.
Because Riker outranks her, and she shows up on the ship. She's a Borg expert, and God sent her. And she's like gets
Admiral Hansen. He's called Admiral Hansen in the episode.
It's Admiral God, Louis.
He plays God in Star Trek 5.
Yeah.
Good one.
Plays God. Anyway, she starts to have these power struggles with Riker, who's above her, but she's like trying to do things behind his back. And it turns out that Riker has been offered the command of some other ship, and he turned it down. And she's of the opinion, and Picard's also of the opinion that Riker is just sort of playing it safe instead of going on the next thing. And so there's a lot of interesting personal conflict between the two of them on that issue. So anyway, they're out flying around, and eventually they run into the Borg, just like they thought they might. And as background, the Borg were introduced in a previous episode in Season 2 with Q as a sort of unstoppable force. And so here they are. They encounter them now, and some stuff happens. The Borg eventually get Picard. They capture Picard and bring him over to the ship, and they tell him what they're going to do to him, and then they do it, and they turn him into a Borg. And then he shows up on the screen of the Enterprise and says, resistance is futile. And at that point, Riker has to decide if he's going to deploy the weapon that Shelby developed, which would destroy the Borg ship, and Picard and on board also. And he decides to do it. He says, Mr. Worf, fire, and then says to be continued. And then you have to wait months and months and months so you can see the next episode because that's the season break.
Which was terrible. That's a terrible way to do that.
We didn't actually have to wait. We didn't wait at all.
Wonderful.
Actually,
no.
We had
I read
episode on VHS. Yeah, so we just watched the second episode over and over.
Some unclarity about whether Patrick Stewart was coming back to the show. And so for the people watching it, they really didn't know. Maybe that's really the end of Picard right there. But anyway, the next season starts. It's now next show starts. It's now season 4, and Riker's gun thing fires, and it just has no effect on the cube. It's just very disappointing. And then Picard, and then they're flying. Then the Borg start flying to Earth and like killing everything, and the Enterprise is chasing them, and Riker's having some like personal struggles because he's like trying to live up to Picard, who he thinks is lost, and he's like looking at Picard's empty chair and saying, "What would you do?" And what he doesn't realize is that he needs to be himself, and he eventually realizes he needs to be himself, and so he creates things like evasive maneuvers pattern Riker Alpha, and you know it's him, and you know it has his special character because it's called Riker Alpha, and
that's right.
And
so implementing complex strategies and smiling broadly when they succeed.
Exactly. His own strategies, not Picard's. It's not Picard Alpha.
Well,
anyway.
So one of the cool things is that his strategy is totally based on the fact that he knows Picard's knowledge is now in the mind of the
something we could talk about is I'm not sure what his strategy is. I think his strategy was to get Picard on the Enterprise and then hope they can figure out something.
Yeah, that was it. I mean, like, his strategy was to use Picard the way that the Borg were using Picard. Like, they were using Picard to get access to all the knowledge of, like, the humans.
No, but it's Data who had the idea of using Picard to hack the Borg. It wasn't Riker's idea. Riker just got him there, and Data was like, I believe we may be able to use... So anyway, for the synopsis, to get Picard back on the Enterprise. He's all Borgified.
Okay, yeah.
You kind of think maybe he's going to be like a new recurring character in season 4, like Locutus the Borg just walking around and his wacky antics. But
yeah.
And then so they're like, it's not really clear why he's there, but he's like saying all this funny stuff. And eventually Data says I might be able to use him to access the Borg supercomputer mainframe or something. And then Data hacks into Picard's Borg implants, and then eventually. They can't, like, Data gets through, but they sort of don't know what to do with that. So Data realizes he can send a message into the Borg system and control them via Picard, but they don't know what to do. And eventually Picard himself, like the real Picard, not the Borg Picard, says, sleep. And Beverly Crusher says, he must be so exhausted. And Data says, no, that's dumb. What he's saying is that we should put the Borg to sleep. And so he does that, and the Borg go to sleep. And then, I don't know, they fly away after that? What happens after they go to sleep?
So they find out that the ship is like they're regenerating all the Borg, and then there's a feedback loop of like energy in their power core or something because they went to sleep without preparing for it.
What happens to the Borg ship after they fall asleep? Does
it blows up
out there?
It blows up. Yeah, they go visit the ship to make sure that the Borg are sleeping.
Oh yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah,
and then the very end, Riker still has 4 pips as a captain and goes back to being commander because I guess it was just a battlefield promotion and he doesn't really want it. Shelby is now a full commander. You should notice that at the very end, and she's taking up the task of like fixing Starfleet, and then Picard's got like one Borg piece left on his head, and he looks outside, and you can tell he's really disturbed, which is why the follow-up episode is super useful and important because it's him dealing with the fact that he was used as a weapon of mass destruction by the Borg. Like, he was used to kill 11,000 people. Anyway, that's another episode. It's called Family. The one scene worth mentioning that it's tangential to this, but it shows you what actually happened. Well, 2 scenes on this. There's him fighting with his brother Rene in the mud of their vineyard in frickin' France, and as they're fighting, like, he breaks down and he starts crying, which is so like epic. See Patrick Stewart cry, and he's just like, they took everything from me. They took all that I was and they perverted it. And his brother's like, you're gonna have to live with this, man. You'll get through it. And then the other scene that's really poignant on Picard and his transformation, which I guess we'll just launch into discussion here, is when he's being assimilated, after he's been captured and you see him on the Borg ship and they're putting, stuff into his body, you see one tear.
Yeah, one single tear rolls down his cheek because he knows he can't do anything about it, no matter how hard
there's still some measure of his personality that's present there during the process, and he's. So later they ask, Riker near the end of the episode asks him how much does he remember, and he says, everything, and he kind of looks down with shame, including some brilliantly unorthodox strategy by a former first officer of mine.
Yeah.
And then, that it was so his first officer came into his own, even though he still feels like he needs to learn from Picard. So that's something to discuss, like why Riker does that and what's going on with Riker and
those who wish
Riker's
to command
future.
must first learn to obey.
That was Nietzsche. That's a great comment. Yeah. Yeah, the real interesting thing is that he spends like 10 years doing it.
I've got a question about the Borg. Like, if they're so, like, super adapted to all kinds of attacks, like, has no one ever really thought of this idea of grabbing one of them and telling them to sleep before? Like, they're vulnerable to that hack?
Well, so Data
usually they blow everyone up and assimilate them before that can even happen.
So Data was connected into the whole collective. Like, he could send a command into the whole computer system. And but this is the second time they've ever encountered the Borg in Star Trek history. Well, I mean, as far as like,
but like of all the thousands of races the Borg have encountered, they've never encountered one that had this idea before.
Probably they either were killed or assimilated. Most people that encounter the Borg are too weak and too like not powerful to think through. I mean, I guess.
There's the issue. So, but Locutus says, Borg Picard Locutus says when he sees Data, he says, primitive artificial life form, implying the Borg have encountered artificial life forms that are less primitive than him.
Well, I
think
it
seemed like they would have been able to do that hack.
I think that they think that they are the more powerful artificial life form. I think that all others that they encounter are going to be primitive. So
the Borg it's interesting to compare the Borg to the Founders in that they're both they don't really have a notion of individual. Or they kind of do, but it's like it really, really equal and coordinated in some kind of interesting way that I think is supposed to be a foil to how the Federation's supposed to work.
Yeah. So the Borg are kind of an interesting ideological foil for the Federation. And
exactly.
It's funny that you thought that maybe
they've achieved a society of complete equality. Like, you'd think that in many ways they are what the Federation's going for, but what they don't have, I guess, is what Picard says is self-determination.
That's right.
And in the end, that's what does them in, because
equality by any means necessary.
They work because every single Borg member can be trusted to do what's best for the collective. So once they have someone in the system who's not going to do that, like the hacker Data, they're totally vulnerable.
Yeah, I don't think they anticipated having someone inside the collective who would be a source of, and clearly they
can
fix that later.
To have that level of equality, you have to have a huge level of trust, and so they're inherently susceptible to this problem. If you want to have that level of coordination with equality, then you're inherently going to be susceptible to that hack.
Yeah. So there's a lot of interesting things about the structure of the Borg and how it works and how they're all connected. But there's just some notes that I wrote. The opening was really creepy. You have like a hole in a planet where a colony used to be.
Yeah. And they beamed them down. It's like a good thing they didn't beam them down to where they thought colony would have been, because they would have beamed right on top of the big hole and they would have fallen down and they would have all died and the episode would have been over.
Or like broken their legs or something, right? I mean.
Oh, no, they would have died. That's a deep-ass hole.
Okay.
Excuse me, I'm an expletive fan.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Now I have 3 members of the Hive in my house. Speaking of Borg, inside.
You need to hack them and gain access to their collector.
No. Yeah, that would be very interesting. I've been thinking about watching a documentary. So to the listeners, we've got, in my house in Texas, which apparently is common to have bees or wasps just set up shop at one's house or near one's house. And for the past couple of weeks, I've had either a hive of bees outside or wasps, or waves of invading wasps come in, usually on the weekends, which is annoying because that's when I'm there. So I've had at least 12 who've come into my house, promptly tried to find a way out by running into my large living room window over and over, and then died. And now I've only got 3 that have, I guess, come in since I was driving around earlier after the rest of them died, and they're just kind of hanging out in various parts of my kitchen or my room, and they shall also inevitably die. I don't know what it
they've
is.
been
Just
separated
like all
from
living
their-
beings.
Yeah.
The what? Oh, like all. Yeah, well, I don't know what it is that's killing them. I think it's the combination of essential oils. But anyway, back to the best of both worlds. So we're going to probably edit out the members of the Hive comment. I don't know. Ron Jones does fantastic music for the whole episode. The final 5 minutes is called Captain Borg. That's the track name. It's one of the greatest pieces of music in Star Trek history. It's epic. It's like it really pulls you in. When I watched the episode earlier this week, or both of them, I even watched the opening sequence, which the opening sequence, The Next Generation, is really great. The music's really triumphant. There's a couple comments that are funny. We don't know really what the title is referring to. I mean, it's a great title, but
Yeah, I thought of that. Like, what is it that Picard gets to experience the best of both the humanity and the Borg, and he really appreciates that opportunity?
I mean, like, yeah, why would you even characterize
Or lack
it that
thereof.
way? Yeah, I mean, maybe he is the best of both worlds. Like, he's the best that ever occupied the Borg world, and he's also clearly was the best in the world of Starfleet or humanity. And, like, he was only the best
Maybe it
of
refers
the
to
Borg
Riker.
world because, yeah?
Riker gets to experience both being a captain and not having to leave Picard, because he gets Picard back.
Interesting. That seems more plausible a theory.
Yeah, because it's not talking about Picard enjoying being best in two worlds. So
Maybe the title
that
refers to an earlier version of the script and it no longer makes sense given the current version of the script.
They just screwed up. Yeah, that'd be funny. I think there's another one. One thing that was interesting was the Admiral Hansen, you're referring to as God, was talking to Captain Picard early on in the episode and was talking about Shelby. And it's just really like ribald because he says, yeah, she's really impressive. And
oh, yeah.
Picard says, you seem rather taken with her. And then he says, oh, just an old man's fantasy. And you were like,
sort of throwback to the casual sexual harassment going on in the original series.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, where does a comment like that have a place among professional men in the 24th century? But I guess sexism was still there. So
yeah, racism doesn't go. It's a glitch. We can weed it out of our species and potentially other species.
Yeah.
But sexism, no, that seems to persist, even in the optimistic world that Gene Roddenberry creates.
Yeah. There was a lot of interesting questions I had about the episode, or a lot of interesting observations. So one thing that I learned was that Michael Tiller, who wrote both the episode and its conclusion in season 4, he was having the internal mental debate that gets depicted as Riker's questioning himself through the episode. He was trying to figure out, do I want to stay with this show or not? That's really loud. He was like,
there's a bug. I had to kill it.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So he was trying to figure out, why am I still here? Because I could be doing feature films, I could be doing other things with my life, and he came to the same conclusion that Riker did, which was that, being here enables me to have the enjoyment of relating to my comrades who I really respect, and I'm happy here, and there's nothing wrong with that, and I can stay here if I want, which is interesting because like he gets a battlefield promotion, and it seems like he would kind of have to stay a captain unless he like asked for a demotion. Like, yeah, I want to go back to being a commander, which must have happened. It was funny that you, Richard, were talking about maybe Locutus is just going to be a recurring character. That was never in my mind possible.
Well, they sort of gave away at the beginning of the second episode when they did the cast, and the first thing is Captain Picard. I think they should have said Patrick Stewart as Locutus of Borg, so that you think he's going to be, hanging out.
Oh, okay, yeah. That makes sense. To keep the, interestingly, you were saying about the suspense, this was the episode that changed public perception of Next Generation. Like, a lot of people were kind of lukewarm towards it for the first 3 seasons, but when this happened, everybody at all the conventions suddenly started saying, "Oh wow, that's hardcore, good Star Trek. We should pay attention." So anyway, Michael Piller is basically Riker and worked things out through writing this. Locutus actually means he who has spoken, Latin.
Locutus est.
Yeah, he has spoken. The really creepy red laser thing at the end of the first episode where he looks into the camera with the laser, that was actually Michael Westmore, who was the prop and makeup artist. His son put a red laser on his ear, and he was like, "Oh, we should totally do that." So this effect that could have cost a lot of money was just they put a laser on his head. Let's see.
How old was this kid? He's genius.
Like 10 or something. Yeah. So the music was exquisite, as I said. I really like Guinan's relationship to Picard, which pretty much never gets explained in the show. They apparently they're closer than friends. They're closer than family. And I am willing to let him go. Like that whole thing. I was just like, well, how do they know each other? And then how does, going even further, how does Q know Guinan? Because in the episode where they first meet the Borg, when Q comes on the ship, Guinan throws up her arms as if she has some ability to resist the power of the Q, and Q gets into kind of martial arts stance with her too, and he starts talking to Picard like, "Hey, you let her onto your ship? This is a problem. You shouldn't have her here." And so anyway, she says they have had dealings, which is such a great word.
Sometimes it's better to show and tell.
Sometimes. I mean, I like that they showed without telling. I mean, somewhere in the books, there's a book where Guinan and Picard meet on the Stargazer or something, so that gets explained a little bit. But anyway, I liked the epic ending. We were going to be talking about the Locutus being a recurring character. I like how in season 3, and this is a huge part of what makes Voyager interesting, actually, is in the end of season 3 or the beginning of season 4, they bring 7 of 9 onto the ship, and she has been a Borg all her life. She likes being a Borg. She doesn't want to be anything else. But Janeway basically takes away her free will to choose to go back to the Borg and says, "You're going to be a human now." And so 7 of 9 is a far more interesting recurring Borg character than I think Picard ever could have been, because Picard would have just been like, all right, well, piece by piece becoming more human eventually. They would have worked really hard over time to fix that. But 7 was like, no, I don't want to be human, and you're weird and annoying, and you're stealing my free will while heralding my ability to self-determine and telling me that I don't know what that means yet and that I got to learn it from you. That's crazy. So anyway, that's kind of an interesting. So when I showed this to my philosophy intro philosophy students last year, we talked about could one be happy as a Borg? What would it be like to be a Borg? What would your experience be? Your consciousness and all that.
It must be a feeling of ecstatic togetherness with your fellow Borg.
I mean, there are lots of other minds that you're connected to.
Yeah. It's like how Odo describes the Great Link.
Yeah.
That feels great.
Yeah. So, I mean, the only issue is that you got to have your individuality. Well, I mean, we value individuality, right? We really like the idea of being ourselves and choosing to eat bacon rather than cheese in the morning.
Yeah.
I mean,
what if we didn't?
Yeah, what if we didn't have that? That would be interesting.
What if we didn't?
What would we do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what if we didn't?
My
want that?
culture believes in freedom and self-determination. Self-determination is irrelevant. You must comply.
Self-determination is irrelevant. Self-esteem is irrelevant.
I like the Borg. They're very no nonsense. They don't play games. Picard wants to play this game with them where they're going to negotiate. They're like, no, you must comply.
Too much talking, more doing.
We have outclassed your weapon system.
And they say, and he says, I'd rather die, and they say death is irrelevant. So I guess even if he kills himself, they'll still be able to turn him into a Borg.
Yep.
Yeah, which is why he just kind of gives in to the extent that he does. Oh, interesting little tidbit. The Borg Queen was there. She says in First Contact that she was there on the cube. And he's kind of confused in First Contact. He's like, but wait, you were destroyed. on that cube, and she's like, you think in such small-minded, three-dimensional terms, like as if she's basically a function of the collective that reinstantiates whenever she gets destroyed. But
I think
she was there on the
whole
cube.
Borg Queen thing to be really a sort of betrayal of what made the Borg intellectually interesting, but that's okay. Got to make a good movie sometimes.
We needed a really good movie.
I thought they made it more intricate, right? That you have sometimes a coordinating influence for the collective. I mean,
but what makes it interesting is the idea that there isn't. What makes it interesting is the idea that maybe you don't need a leader, maybe you don't need a queen, maybe it really is just totally coordinated.
Yeah, Rick Berman had this opinion that the Borg were uninteresting because there was no personality for you to dig into or no character for you to interact with.
That is the personality.
That is what makes them interesting, is them not having one. They're just a force, like wasps.
Exactly.
Luckily, these wasps aren't actually swarming my house. Yeah, there's just 3 of them hanging out on different.
We're talking about the Borg so that we can find a way to eliminate the presence of wasps in Lewis's house.
No.
This is a workshop. We're just talking through it.
We're just fine. We're all fine here. We're fine. How are you? Remember Star Wars? Yeah. So what else was there? There were some interesting other things. So when they're aboard the cube to try to rescue Picard the first time in the end of the first episode, I noticed that 2 things. I noticed that when they would fire like the hand phasers at the Borg, there would be this little moment of like blue light dissolving in the Borg, like as if there was kind of a what do you call it? A residue of energy, like burning them in the spot where they were shot. So it led me to think, like, how do phasers actually work? What's actually going on with a phaser? And I didn't do any research, so I don't have any good answers, but it's a good question.
Well, they just they request God produce a beam of energy, and he does.
No.
That's right. The actual physical constructs that we call phasers are conduits through which God works to disintegrate all life.
Exactly. Clearly that's not the case. The phased energy reamplification, that's what it's short for.
So they should all stop working after Hansen dies.
That's right.
It's
accurate.
Okay. You guys, you're acting like we've already exhausted the meaningful content of the episode, and it's time to move on to an absurd.
That's right. That's not fair. There was an interesting part. So there, in the first episode, there's this part where the ship's under attack, and they have to evacuate engineering, and Geordi rolls to make it under this door before it closes. But if you look at it carefully, it's pretty clearly already on the far side of the door, but he rolls anyway.
That's right. He could just duck and move not so elegantly across so that he doesn't die. Instead, he chooses to roll because he remembers watching Kirk on TV.
Yeah.
Let's see what else was there. This is a very high quality episode. There's just really not a lot wrong with this episode. It's just very well done.
Yeah, these were kind of the best. These were some of the best episodes ever produced. I'd say production, ambiance, music, characterization, pacing, plotting, visuals, visual effects. I mean, yeah, all around. This was funny. The way that the Borg drones fall after they get shot, I thought was hilarious. I thought, like, the way that they collapsed, it was just like, huh?
Literally a shock to their system.
Well, they just kind of trip and fall over themselves at that point. I guess the actors wearing the whole bunch of stuff, like, it was difficult for them to just fall in a kind of casual way without it hurting them a lot because there's all this stuff on them.
Or them breaking the suit in some way.
Yeah, which they want to reuse the suit because they've got to film more scenes or something. Yeah.
We don't. We need this to last.
The development of the Borg over time, right? Clearly it's because you had different makeup and prop scenes, but like they start with this look that's pretty much the same as later on with subtleties altered. And then in First Contact, everybody gets more dark and more green. And first they start off kind of white and yellow. It's more white and yellow and black.
They start off looking kind of cyberpunk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
they look kind of like they might be like, punk rockers. who are like at a concert or something in the 23rd century. But then later they just turn into some kind of zombies.
Yeah, they get more like white-faced and stuff. Let's see what else. The fact that they had a symbol in the hallways, the Borg cube, I thought was interesting. Like, why do they need?
Oh, I didn't see that
symbol. Yeah, there's a very specific symbol. You can look it up. It's a symbol of the Borg Collective, and I'm just like, why? Who do they need that to show that symbol to? I mean, like.
Yeah, they don't.
And why give them a symbol?
I mean, it was on the walls. It was on the walls in the middle of the cube. So it was just kind of like, it looks kind of like a claw. It's like a red-looking claw. And you're just like, why do they need to represent themselves to themselves? They're all a collective. They all know it. They can all picture that symbol intuitively in their minds anyway.
That was for merchandising purposes, I believe.
Yeah, later on when you get the action figures, they would stand on that symbol as their mounting base.
That's right. Carries over into video games too. That's how you know they're the Borg faction, the Red Claw.
Let's see, the Borg
Black
monologue was pretty cool. So I'll just read it. Captain Jean-Luc Picard, you lead the strongest ship of the Federation fleet. You speak for your people. He says, I have nothing to say to you, and I will resist you with my last ounce of strength. They reply, strength is irrelevant. Resistance is futile. We wish to improve ourselves, which is funny. That's their like fundamental premise.
Yeah.
We wish to improve ourselves. So all of this is justified.
It's like the Federation. It's wonderful. It's wonderful that they're improving themselves.
I mean, like, we wish to improve ourselves. We will add and then they're just like, which when you think about it from like an existential point of view, there's no reason that it's wrong for them to do what they're doing. There's no like meta-ethical justification. We don't like what they're doing. We don't want it done to us. But, like, there's no way to prove with absolute certainty that, you know, Hitler killing Jews or the Borg assimilating people is, like, objectively wrong, which is a whole other philosophical question, right? You can't prove an ought from an is. You can't justify objective ethics. You can just sort of talk about what we all want to do as a species, what values we share, what we're interested in. But anyway, we will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our own. Your culture will adapt to service ours. And it's just like, okay, thanks for the announcement. I mean, they didn't even have to communicate it, really. They could have just been like, this is what we're going to do. Impossible. My culture is based on freedom and self-determination. They reply, freedom is irrelevant. Self-determination is irrelevant. You must comply. He says, we would rather die. Death is irrelevant. Your archaic cultures are authority-driven. Ooh, I like that. The subtle, you hear that? The subtle jab,
yeah.
Archaic cultures. We've got an advanced culture. In our advanced culture, we'll all be the same. To facilitate our introduction into your societies, it has been decided that a human voice will speak for us in all communications. You have been chosen to be that voice. Yeah. I mean, imagine that experience. That would be terrible.
What were they like planning for him to do? Was he going to like give speeches, or weren't they just going to go like assimilate everyone by force?
I think they kind of, their strategy around assimilating him and then using him was kind of, I don't know if it was rational. Like, we're going to have him serve as a figurehead for the Borg, and clearly he's an authority already. I mean, they wanted his knowledge. That much is clear. They ended up using his knowledge. But what part he would play in introducing... I mean, you get some of this in the second episode where he's talking about, like, we just wish to raise quality of life for all species.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah. Why is that so funny? What do you think?
It doesn't, like, superficially appear that they have very high quality of life.
Very true. True. Built to last.
Yeah. Some other stuff that I forgot. The second episode was a great conclusion. The music was also good, and the Borg transporter effect was really cool.
I always love that.
Which also had
get out of here.
Yeah, it left me with the question of like, well, what does a transporter do really? Which I also didn't do research on that either. So we're going to assume that it's God breaking your body down and turning you into energy and moving you one from part of the universe to another.
Of course.
So. God rips you apart, and then he smashes you back together and says, hopefully you're okay. Go forth.
Admiral Hansen.
What does God need with a starship?
No one answers that question.
No one ever answers that question. That's true. We just don't know. What does God need for the starship? We just don't know.
Because God remembers being an admiral in the Federation in the future.
Yeah, he travels back in time and is God. I mean, it'd be interesting to look chronologically which was filmed first, because he may have actually been that admiral before he was God in actual filming order. Something of a step up.
Actually, didn't Star Trek V come out before they released Best of Both Worlds in 90?
Oh, yeah. So Star Trek V happened in 1989. Yeah.
As convoluted as Trek plot holes are.
Well, this has been fun. I feel like we're running out of content.
We are, and it's glorious.
It's been fun.
Yeah, and
well, let's just commit to improving ourselves and increasing quality of life.
Yeah.
Can we leave on that positive
for all
note?
Species.
And I have words that I wanted to share with you guys.
Oh, please.
And the words are meaningful contribution.
Really? Well,
thank you.
And?
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're talking about our things that we've created, this podcast, or?
Yes, to the world. Also, that was my contribution, the two words themselves.
Love that. That's great. Oh, the one thing we could talk about that we've got left, Star Trek movie posters. I'm not sure if you guys have the ability to bring them up on your phone or whatever, but I looked up back when we were having the discussion, and there's a lot of conversation we can have about those.
Let's save it for another 10 minutes. Episode.
Or we could do all of the movies next time.
All of them.
All of them in 1 hour?
Well, okay, let's do like.
We could devote an entire series.
Let's do another. I don't have time to watch a lot I
recently rewatched them all. That's the thing.
I see.
Which you guys have seen them all, right?
I try actively to forget Star Trek V.
All right. Well, to our listeners, thank you for listening, and we'll have another podcast for you next week.
That's right. See you guys.
See you soon.
I might be there, I might not. The other guys will.
And good luck.
So I'm just curious how Tyler's going to act now that it's recording again.
I'm going to act like this. This is the person I will be.
This is God.
What does God need with a starship?
I am the truth about the armies of God.
Yeah. What is it you say these days, Richard? You have this thing that you say. No, Tyler, this is the funniest thing. Richard, occasionally, he'll be just hanging out by himself, and he has the thought that he is God.
God tells me things. God tells me that everyone who's alive will be dead, and everyone who's dead will be alive.
What an existence.
All right, well,
I can't wait until one is flipping to the other. Richard, what's the problem solver
and class
that you always apply?
It's certainly worth attention.
I couldn't make out anything.